Hi, welcome to Confederation Park, 55 Plus Activity Center. I am Alesha Butchney. I am your watercolor and acrylic painting instructor. Here at Confederation Park, we offer the watercolor class. There's 3 programs that we offer. I've got a beginners, we've got, the class after the beginners, and then I've got my intermediates. I also run a acrylic class here at Confederation Park. Today, you're gonna watch a brief video on a little bit about what the watercolor class offers, as well as I'm gonna be doing a demo on this beautiful beet. So today's program is gonna run about 30 minutes. You can do this at home. You can do it pretty much anywhere. Watercolor packs up really small and easy. I take it camping with me all the time. I'm going to quickly talk about supplies, which you can get at any of your local art stores. So for today, we've got the watercolor paper. It's 140-pound press, and it's student grade. I don't recommend going out and buying really expensive watercolor paper to start with until you get a good feel for the watercolors. The paints that I use are the Winsor Newton Cotman, and they are student grade, series 1. You can buy these in kits, and you can buy them individually. I'm going to request 3 brushes from you, like a bigger flat brush, a round brush, and a small detailed brush. I always have a pencil, pen, and an eraser. Spray bottle of water, anything will do. You probably have something lying around the house. Painter's tape, always useful. A paint palette. This is something that, excuse my mess, but it's my creativeness here. Paint palette is very important. Paper towel is one of the other things. You probably have that lying around. If you happen to have shop towels, those blue shop towels, they are amazing because you can reuse them over and over and over again. And last but not least, a couple jars of water. We are going to start on a piece, so please join me. Let's get started. Going to work on this beautiful beet today. We're going to be learning a little bit about wet on wet, as a little bit of wet on dry. You can see some splatters, and we're going to be creating some watermark puddles and throughout here. Today, in my classes, when you take my classes, you will always get a color visual as well as a line drawing. It's just easier for us to draw this and get it down onto our watercolor paper than trying to draw the actual colored visual. So once you have it drawn in, which I do here on my watercolor paper, I have my paper taped to a plastic polycarbonate board. You can use a birch board, you can use anything. You could tape it down to your table if you like, but it's kind of handy to have it on something in case you want to move around with it. Today, the colors we will be using are, I have my little color swatch here. I've got quinacridone rose. We're going to be using dioxide violet, alizarin crimson, and purple lake for the purples in our beet. You can see the purples in throughout here. And I'm also using a little bit of watered down ochre. That's kind of that goldy brown color. I played around with all my greens, but I'm not going to use all of them. I'm going to use a brighter green that I have here, which is a phthalo yellow green for this, sap green, and a hooker's green. So let's start painting. So first things first, we're going to wet our brush. So wet your brush, push it all the way down to the bottom of your water container so the water goes all the way up those bristles. Dab it on the side of your jar a few times and pick up some color. Your quinacridone rose, or whatever pink you have. And now we're just going to paint on the beet. Just a nice light wash. We want it to be quite transparent at this point. Just add a little bit more water to your brush and pull that pinkness around all the way down to the end here. And now I want you to pick up a little bit of your dioxide purple on your brush, and I want you to just drop it into areas on our image that look like it's a little bit deeper, darker, richer colors. Okay, and you have to remember with watercolor, everything dries much lighter than you see here. So this will dry so light. We want to create these deep dark, rich colors. So we're just going to pick up a little bit of that alizarin crimson red. We're going to drop them in. So at this point, I don't want too much water on your brush. So when you pick up water, make sure you're dabbing it on the edge of your jar a few times before you pick up more of a concentrated color, because we want these colors to pop. Okay. So this is all called dropping in, or it's also called charging. We're charging with color. I'm going to pick up a little bit of my purple lake here. We're going to drop in a little bit of that purple color. And now we're going to drop in a little bit more of the alizarin crimson, because we want these rich dark colors to pop through. Now you'll notice there's a few whiter areas on our image, so we want to try to keep those. If you accidentally cover them up, like what I'm going to do right now, that's okay, because that's fixable. Okay, so I covered up our white areas. I'm adding in a little bit more purple here, just because I want that purple to kind of shine through. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to lift. So rinse your brush, dry the water off, and you can go in and you can just lift up some of that color right off the beet just by using your brush, dabbing it on your paper towel. Like so. All right, so now we're going to work on the stems. Well, the actual beet is drying here, so I'm just going to add a little bit more color down here. We're going to let this beet dry. Now I'm going to flip my page over so it's a little bit easier for me to work on the leaves and the stems. So I always flip my image over too, so I know where I'm at. Now we're going to go in and we're going to add the stems of the beet. So I'm going to use that quinacridone rose color or whatever pink you have, and we're going to pull a little bit, and some of the color from the beet is going to follow. And that's exactly what we want. And don't worry about staying in the lines, because this piece is very loose and watery. And we're really going to play with it later. So we just want to get in some of those nice deep rich colors on our stems. Fill them in. So now I'm going to take my, let me just get this guy right here. So I'm going to take my smaller brush, just a little bit of water. I'm going to pick up some more of those deep, rich colors, and I'm going to drop it in just in a few places along the stems. And I'm going to paint in those veins on the leaves ever so slightly. We're going to let that dry a few minutes before we go in and we add the green. Now I'm going to add a little purple down here. Dioxide purple. Now you can see how the paper lost its sheen. You can see around the outer edges of the beet how shiny it is. So it's super wet. So any color that you add here will flow directly all the way across that sheen. So down here you can see how the color has dripped and it's created this dark, beautiful color. I'm going to add a little bit to that. I'm going to use a little bit of Payne's Gray here because I want to create that shadow down there. I'm going to add just a little bit in through here. You can see here how the paint doesn't run directly everywhere, but if I were to add it down in that puddle, it likes to bleed a little bit more everywhere down there, okay? Now you may have noticed the white areas have disappeared a little bit. So I'm going to take a dry brush and I'm going to pick up some of that color just with a dry brush and create a whiter highlight and a bit of a whiter spot. It's not going to go directly white back to the white of the paper, but it will definitely lighten it. Okay. So now I'm going to go in and just keep adding some brighter, vibrant colors to my stems. And it's not going to be on every single stem. I don't want to see the same color on every single stem. So kind of bounce back between your Alizarian Crimson and your Quinacridone Rose. And just kind of play with the color. Drop it in. After we get the leaves in, we are going to crispen up those veins a little bit more with some paint. But we just want to have a good variation of pinks on the stems at the moment. Now, I'm going to take my dry brush again and I'm going to lift just a little bit in the center here because I want to create that ochre brown spot, but I wanted to create that, have that transparency of that purple underneath. So we're just going to go in, lift some of that color up, and it's okay if it goes right off your beet. And we're going to add some of that yellow ochre in, but we don't want it too dark. So this, yeah, we want to water that down just ever so slightly. You put it in there, it's going to run and it's going to bleed with the other colors, which is what we want. So don't worry. This is more of a wet on wet experiment here, not experiment piece. Okay, so we get that beautiful ochre in. Now, you may have noticed that there's a lot of splatter and a lot of pooling of puddles. We're going to create those after we get the details of our beet in. Okay, so now I'm just giving this a good wave. I'm going to let this dry a little bit more. I'm going to actually put in a little bit more color, Quinacridone Rose, in a few spots. We really just want some of that beet to really pop. There we go. Okay. Now I'm going to start on the stems, the green leaves here. So at the top down here, or at the bottom, or at the top of the leaves up here, I'm going to start with my bright green. And I'm going to go in and I'm just going to do a quick layer with my smaller brush. Just going to fill it in. You may notice I'm not staying in my pencil lines. I'm kind of going outside of them. I'm going to use a bit of a bigger brush here for this. It's okay if the pinks part is a little bit wet because we want it to bleed ever so slightly, but not very much. If your paper is super shiny, I'd wait a few minutes before you do this. If it's super shiny, your colors are just going to bleed and they're just going to make mud on your page. So patience is something that watercolor teaches you very fast. So we're just going to get in these nice, bright, vibrant green colors. So I'm still using that bright yellowy green I have. You can use whatever bright green you have. If you don't have a bright green, you can always lighten a green by adding a little bit of yellow to it. Okay, so just get those colors in. Still pretty wet and shiny in through there, but that's okay. Okay, so now I'm going to actually drop in some Hooker's green here. So it's a much deeper, richer green. And I'm just going to drop it in a few areas. In some areas it's going to be darker. So if you really want that green to pop through, then you pick up a little bit more paint on your brush and less water, and that will give you the brighter, vibrant colors. See how it's bleeding a little bit here. Good. We want it to bleed a little bit, not too much, but just ever so slightly. Okay. So now I'm going to let that dry, and I'm going to come back to my beet down here. And I'm going to create puddles just of water. So I'm just picking up straight water, putting it down, letting it run right off the beet because it's still a little bit wet. You're creating some abstract watermarks here. You're letting the color bleed directly from the beet to create these. And you can add as many or as little as you'd like. Put a little ochre here because I want an ochre puddle coming out. Come in, add a little puddle here. And some of these puddles you're going to want to add a little bit of color too. Once we have them established here, the little puddles. Okay. Just a little bit of water. Bring it out. Bring it down. Now the stems are still a little bit too wet to do this, but you can do a little bit. But I wouldn't do too much. Just slight. There it is. Okay. All right. So now I'm just going to add a little bit of the sap green into our leaves here, just a hint of it. We're going to pull some of that color off the leaves, just subtle, just like what we did around the beet. And then we're going to splatter here. Okay. Drop in a little bit of that ochre, a little bit more. Good. All right. So now we've pulled our petals out. We've got our highlights. I'm going to take a little bit of that quinacridone red. So about 50% paint, 50% water. And I'm going to just give it a good splatter. I'm going to splatter a little bit with that Payne's Gray down at the bottom. So again, 50% water, 50% paint. Just a hint. And I'm going to do a little bit of that dioxide purple. Not as much, whoops, that came a little bit more. And now we're going to do a few green splatters up top. So I'm going to start with the light. And a little bit of that hooker's green. I just want a few drops of the hooker's green. Then we're going to quickly go over a little bit of that quinacridone, some of the veins. They'll bleed a little bit into that green. And now we have to let it dry. But at the end, once it's dry, you're going to go over and you're going to create lines just with a simple gel pen. Mine's a little bit too wet right now to do that. You can see how the paper is warping and bubbling. So you want to make sure that this is dry before you go over. But then I just want you to go over really loose and go over your outlines really loose. For this picture, I held my pen up at the top and I was really, really, really loose doing it. So I have one leaf here I wanted to show you on here. So you can see on the beat I've got very loose outline. I don't have one solid line. They're very loose, like quick sketches. So hold your pen up top, just kind of go super loose. You can even go along some of the edges here of the veins, just to, it's not really highlighting them, but it's just defining them. And then you're done. So again, just let this one dry, let your colors run, let them bleed. But as soon as you start adding those crisp lines with your black gel pen, it's going to be beautiful. Make sure you sign and date it. So I hope to see you soon, whether it's online or in class. Take care. Thank you for joining us. I look forward to seeing you. If you have any questions or you'd like to join our classes here, please contact us at Confederation Park 55 Plus Activity Center. We hope to see you. Thanks. Take care.